During a recent live stream, while loading in for a match for Shangri, one of the fans in my chat mentioned, "We're going to Mars." I instantly replied back to him with a little quick mini rant on why I personally do not think that the map takes place on Mars. For those who don't know, there is a popular fan theory that Shangri-La takes place on Mars. This is one of the most popular and polarizing fan theories in the zombies community. For years, discussion of this map and whether or not it was on Mars was a major topic. For some, it seems super obvious that it was on Mars, and for me and other fans like me, we personally believed it seemed pretty obvious it wasn't on Mars. However, I recently had an epiphany that kind of changed my perspective on this fan theory, and I would like to share that conclusion with you. So, this is my personal theory on one of Call of Duty Zombies' oldest mysteries. Is Shangri-La on Mars? Before we analyze this, we got to take a look back at the original argument. For my end of the conversation, one of the main arguments that I've always used is Shangri-La is pretty obviously a pretty obtainable location to get to, albeit very difficult. As we know, when Richtofen first appeared at the site, there are already human beings living there. Richtofen ends up essentially becoming a god of these people, and they spend a lot of time doing a lot of the tasks for Richtofen, such as mining 115 and things of that nature, and they end up building a monument to him, which is where we find the focusing stone. Later on, we see characters like Brock and Gary, who physically travel to the map location, to which they get stuck in the time loop, meeting their eventual eternal ends stuck in this time loop. On the other side of the argument, there's a lot of on the other side of the argument, there are points such as the background mountains in the map being literally called Mars Mountains. I often disputed this point as purely an aesthetic choice by the devs. The map itself is very yellow and orange, and the Martian colors fit right in. So you can obviously stick a picture of the Martian mountains in the background of the map, and it wouldn't affect anything. It looks right at home. Another point that fans used for this argument is when doing the Easter egg, you go in and out of Eclipse mode. This is essentially the main gimmick of the map, hence why the Easter egg itself is called Eclipse. Anyway, when you go into Eclipse mode, you can look at the moon in the sky. You'll notice that the moon itself is not quite the shape that it normally is. When you compare it to images of the moon in, say, Doris, where it's a pretty clear circle, you kind of notice that the moon in Shangri-La is a little misshapen. It's not quite a circle, and it's not quite an oval. It's not quite an oval either. It's just kind of a little misshapen, almost oval, almost circle, but it's neither of those shapes. Fans would assign this moon to being Phobos, one of the two moons that orbit Mars. And in fact, when you look at the image of Phobos, you kind of notice that the moon in Shangri-La and Phobos look kind of similar. It's a little weird to actually see it, but they do look similar. Now, even for fans like me who did not originally believe this theory, it's kind of hard not to notice that this is almost certainly an intentional detail. Because of the nature of the map, where you're going in and out of Eclipse mode multiple times, it's hard to say that this wasn't put there in place for fans to notice, as the Eclipse is literally the main spectacle of the map. it's one of the big showcases in the map. It's probably the most beautiful thing that you get to see in the map is Eclipse mode. So essentially, what I'm getting at is Treyarch wanted us to see this. And in fact, when you take a look back at Eclipse mode, when you're going into it, you'll notice that it's a very similar animation to when you're teleporting. Now, as we know, as I've discussed in videos in the past, teleporting is not a straightforward science in this timeline. 115 and teleportation has a very interesting relationship, as 115 allows teleportation to happen, but because of the erratic nature of 115, it's hard to pin down exact coordinates, exact time and date. Essentially, time travel is extremely difficult to do in this universe because the erratic nature of this element cannot allow the user to pinpoint anywhere in time or space and allow them to travel there at will. Now, when we take a look back at the actual map of Shangri-La, we know that there are large deposits of 115 here. As I mentioned, when Richtofen first traveled here, the locals essentially worshipped him, and so Richtofen essentially turned these more primitive people into a more modern civilization. And when you take a look at the architecture around the map, a lot of it seems very ancient, but when you look at the technology of the map, a lot of it seems very modern. When you go to the power room, there's the water mechanism which powers the whole map. There's the railroad cart. When you take a look at all of these things, it's all very sophisticated. And this all kind of culminates into these locals essentially mining 115 in large amounts for Richtofen. And by the time we get there, the people that Richtofen once ruled over are now zombified because of the mass amounts of 115 dramatically affecting the population. This ties into teleportation as a whole because when we go into Eclipse mode, one can assume that we're essentially teleporting the map. And again, as erratic as 115 can be, the possibilities on the teleporting of the map is endless. You really don't know what could possibly happen. And ultimately, this is the point where I had the epiphany that kind of opened my eyes to this whole theory. And when taking a look at it, it all becomes pretty clear. The main piece of evidence I want to show you of this is the loading screen. When taking a look at the loading screen, you kind of notice this large tornado engulfing this jungle city and taking it away. Knowing that this is a preview of the map we're playing, this is obviously a representation of the location we are at. And knowing that essentially we're kind of teleporting, what we're seeing in the preview image is the actual act of going into Eclipse mode. And knowing the outside information, knowing that the moon is different and all these other things, it's entirely plausible that we could be teleporting the actual map to Mars. The essential smoking gun to this theory is later on, when we get to Tog der Toten, there's a secret Easter egg that allows players to access a secret location in the map. Players have to access this certain tunnel, and then they swim through the tunnel, and when arriving to the other side, you arrive to a small island, and when you look at the sky, you see Mars. So the implication there is that that little island is on one of Mars's two moons. You are orbiting Mars. And what I'm assuming is when traveling through that long tunnel, you're essentially traveling through space and time to land at this location on that moon. This is a pretty clear nod to this original fan theory. So I think the conclusion we are mainly supposed to get here is that while Shangri-La itself doesn't take place exclusively on the moon, it almost certainly at one point does. Knowing that eclipse mode could be a means of time travel through space and time, I think the implication here is that Shangri-La takes place both on Earth and Mars. This would certainly allow for characters like Brock and Gary and the general population of Shangri-La to exist there, but also allow the map to exist on Mars. So, in conclusion, the main story here is that each time we go into eclipse mode, we're essentially activating basically a teleportation of the entire location, and we are traveling to Mars. And when we deactivate it, we return back to Shangri-La in the Himalayan mountains. Now, I do realize I am not the first person to come up with this theory, as I've kind of noticed in doing research for this topic that there's a few discussions about this exact theory on Reddit, which, knowing that people are discussing this, I'm almost certain that this is the intended conclusion we are supposed to get. I will try to find those Reddit discussions, and I will try to link those in the description here so that you can take a look at those and see the evidence they provide, all that stuff, so you can draw your own conclusions as well. But yeah, it's very funny to do a complete 180 on something like this, because usually when it comes to zombies, I've had a lot of time to draw conclusions on all these fan theories and things like that. So this is probably one of the few times that I've actually had a mystery unraveled way past the lifespan of these games. I mean, when Chronicles came out and they released the Chronorium, obviously they revealed a lot of information to us that were otherwise just fan theories or things like that. Didn't really have any reason to be revealed to us, but they were, and it was actually really cool. So it's very fun to look at this mystery and to be wrong about it. I was so off the mark. But anyway, I hope that this discussion allowed you, the fan, to really analyze this information in a completely different way as it did for me. I hope that there's more things to discover in these older games. I hope that there's still things to discover and things to find, because that to me is the real charm of zombies. Going back at stupid old mysteries like this is really what made the franchise super successful, and I hope I can find more things like this to discuss and share with you guys. But anyway, that's enough for me. I love the support I keep getting from you guys. For the people who showed up to watch the stream, thank you so much. You guys are great. To everyone who's watching the videos, I gained about 64 subscribers in the last week or two, and all of those subscribers I know are here specifically for the zombies content, and I am doing the most to pump out content for you guys, and because I like doing this. I will be streaming more. I think what my plan is, still stick to my one stream post upload, and I might do a midweek stream. We'll see. We'll see how that works out. But yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really means a lot to me, and I hope we can keep growing the channel, because I'm about halfway to my public watch hour eligibility, and I would like to hit that soon. So let's get cracking on watching these videos, guys. But yeah, have a great day.